Is it time for you to right-size your home? Is it time to either move to a larger home, move to the country, move out of the country? And what do I do with the house that I have? Maybe it's time to have an investment property, because one of the least expensive things to do is keep your existing property and turn it into a rental property.
Wait,
so
why?
That's what this show's about.
Okay.
All right?
I'll stop asking questions.
That's
yet.
okay. You can ask questions very soon.
So why is it?
Who are you, by the way?
Oh, I'm Ryan Decker.
And Ryan Decker. And Ryan, what do you specialize in?
Specialize in real estate investment properties
Okay.
and land.
So you help people develop wealth through real estate?
I sure do.
Nice. I like doing that too. Okay, so I'm Ken Decker, and I'm owner of Keller Williams Solid Rock Realty and also one of the partners with Decker Team. I've been a real estate investor for close to 30 years. Yeah, own multiple properties, and also I'm the author of The Wealth Formula, which teaches people how to get out of debt and build wealth through investment vehicles as well as real estate as an investment vehicle. So today we're going to talk about...
That's an impressive bio.
Is that an impressive bio?
I like it.
You like it? Nice. Well, you ought to like it. You're my son. I've got to leave you half of everything I own.
That's true.
After Yetta
Well,
gets
it's not
it.
true.
After Yetta gets it first.
Yet, eh? Nice.
Yeah. Actually, you won't get half. The church is going to get a bunch of it.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. We just said that live on radio, so
Whatever.
guess we're going to have
Forgive
to
us.
follow through with that. So, ways to make it happen. So, how can we get our house to pay for itself?
Well, is it the current house you're living in, or is it the one that you're leaving?
Both. Like, we may be able to get some money from the one we're moving into if we buy something that could have an ancillary apartment, or maybe it's a duplex, triplex, fourplex, and we're living in one of the units. Like, I think on a fourplex, you can probably pretty much live for free. Pretty close, right? Yeah, so that may be where someone's moving because they're deciding, hey, I want to take this step of creating passive wealth and we call passive wealth. It's kind of not passive. It's kind of a bad word, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm changing my language.
Are you? What would you use instead?
I like passive abundance.
Passive abundance.
Yes.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay. Well, I thought we were getting rid of the word passive,
passive.
not the abundance part, or the wealth.
The
part.
wealth part.
Yeah. And what's interesting is sometimes people use the word abundance for, they've got unlimited resources or unlimited money. And that's not what abundance is. Abundance is being really satisfied with what God's given you.
Yeah.
That's living an abundant life. Because when you're not in want of something else, it's not that God doesn't want to give you the desires of your heart and that He doesn't want us to work towards things. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm just talking about your current situation. You can have abundance in your current situation when you feel that all your needs are met.
To me, having abundance is having more than you actually need.
Yeah, and I think
It's not more than you desire.
Most of us have it.
Yeah,
most of us have
too.
more than we need, for sure. And abundance is also time with family. It's time with God. It's because sometimes we live an unabundant life because we filled our time slots too full with busy work, and now we're not living an abundant life because we're not doing what God called us to. Wow, are we on a bunny trail or what? This is awesome. So we're talking about maybe keeping our existing home as a rental, because there is a cost to sell a property and to move and all that. But if the house isn't suiting our needs anymore, then maybe it's time to move somewhere, right? So if your home's not meeting your needs right now, then maybe it's time to adjust something, or maybe it's time to move. And one of the things we want to figure out is when we go to move, first of all, do we have the finances that we could afford to keep the existing one, rent it out, and buy another one? And secondly, is that one a good rental? So what makes for a good rental property?
That's a big question.
Is it? What would make a property not great for a rental property?
So Oh man, it's still the same question. So I'm going
You're
to attack
right.
this a little bit. However, know that to answer this fully, I would need to see the property and see if there's any other things there. But
Right.
in general, you want a property that cash flow positive. That would be one of the criteria.
Okay.
Another criteria.
So if it was too expensive a property and couldn't rent in that neighborhood for enough money, that would disqualify it as a good
Potentially.
rental property,
Yeah, it would
Okay.
definitely be a mark against
Okay.
keeping it.
right? I would also say places that have hot tubs and in-ground pools and things like that are not impossible to rent. They're more difficult to maintain as a rental. You might have to have a company look after the maintenance of the pool and include that in the rental
Yeah.
charge, because the last thing you want is a damaged pool.
Right. And another few things that could make it disqualified in my books, anyways, is property in the country on well or septic, or
Okay.
well and septic, sorry. For a lot of reasons. One being that if the septic isn't maintained properly, or isn't the sewage system, they're flushing the wrong things or whatever, it can kill it. And then you're out 30 grand, and that investment you were trying to make is now gone or
Right.
negative.
So our preference, although I've had rental properties
too.
in the country,
I
and
still have rentals
you still
in the
have
country.
rental properties in the country, they would be less desirable than something that's on city water and city sewer.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's one of those marks that it may not make sense.
Okay, and I find also sometimes a property, if you're emotionally attached to it,
Oh, yeah.
you know, if you lived in it and you want it, like maybe you had it built and you're only there for a year or so, and then you decide to move and you're going to rent it, and maybe you want to come back to it at some point. That's the other piece. If you want to come back to it at some point, you're so emotionally attached to
Can be.
yeah, you can be.
Not everyone.
Not everyone is, but many people are very emotionally attached to how they remember it, how pristine it was. And then 5-10 years later, they move back to it and they're crying because it's
There's been wear and tear.
wear and tear. Yeah, and probably it might have been the same wear and tear if they lived in it. And the other thing is, when you live there and you notice things, typically you maintain things maybe a little better, right? Yeah, so being able to detach from a property emotionally is one of my criterion as to whether someone should keep a property as a rental property.
And sometimes people buy a house and maybe it's just too far away from where they're moving to, and they don't trust a management company to do it well enough.
Okay.
And so maybe location is no longer a fit because they're moving too far away from it.
Yeah, sometimes people move from their house to make a right fit to one that's closer to work, because maybe work moved, maybe they got transferred, maybe they changed jobs and now they're driving across the total city and they don't want to, so they want to move close to their employment or close to their church, and that would mean the rental property is back where they're trying to get away from. So they got to go back there to pick up the rent or to check on the property, maintain it, whatever.
So another question I have about this is, a lot of people who own and they don't have a rental property yet often have fears about owning a rental property.
Right.
So if I'm moving and I'm keeping, maybe financially I can do it, maybe it's the best decision I could make right now financially. However, there's so many fears.
Yeah, what kind of fears?
Well, what if my tenant destroys the place?
Okay. And so you've been a landlord for
9 years?
9 years?
10.
How often has somebody destroyed the place?
Never.
Never. Have you had to go in and paint or clean?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
And it's painful for a day or two?
Yeah, if that, yeah. It is what it is.
But they don't typically destroy places. Even the worst one I ever had did put some holes and leave the place somewhat damaged. And I actually went to court and got a settlement because they had broken their contract and left the property in very poor condition. But again, it was fix it up and away we go. So there is a cost. I think if you had a septic system and they blew your $25,000 septic system or something, that may be a little tougher to pill to swallow, right? I've had one of those, but it was a very old septic system, so I just chalked it up as maintenance, put in a new septic system, and later when I actually sold the property, I regained all that money and
having a
and
new
more
septic. Yeah.
and more. Yeah, not because of the new septic, just because values had gone up and the property was improved. I improved the exterior, the interior.
I remember improving that one.
You remember improving that?
Stepped on a nail that one of those days.
And you had your safety sneakers on?
I sure did. Yeah.
Nice. Well, we've learned, eh?
Yeah.
Wear your safety boots on a construction site.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I
So
wasn't actually on the site, just for credibility.
you weren't
I was
on the site.
out of the site when I stepped on the nail.
Oh,
So
yeah.
you're still good. Your safety record is still safe.
Oh, okay. I have a good safety record. Nice. So we're going to talk about. Well, let's continue because some people, even if the house isn't the right house, it may be the right time when they're moving to get an investment property, because that's the chance for them to take some equity out of their property to buy another property. So they're actually buying two now instead of one. And that's a great thing to do at the same time because of financing charges and all that kind of thing, right?
I do want to close the loop on this fear, though, and that is wherever there's a risk, there's usually a way to mitigate it. So the reason that I haven't had a tenant that destroyed the place, it's not luck. It's not that I'm blessed and I am blessed. It is that there's a strategy in order to get great tenants and keep great tenants. And for all the other fears you might have with owning a rental, there's also ways to mitigate those fears, mitigate those risks.
Okay, so mitigating the risk and being educated on how to
How to
reduce that risk.
Right. Before it happens and if it happens.
If it happens.
Both.
Yeah, so if a tenant stops paying, for instance, understanding the law of what your abilities are, your recourse is against the tenant, and when to take action will significantly reduce any amount of loss that you might
Or
incur.
hiring someone to do that for you.
Yes, a good property manager can do a lot of good stuff for you. And I have property managers, even though I know the law, I know what to do, I don't want to do it. And so on my bigger properties, I have a property manager. Because when there's 12 tenants in a building, and I might have to be there 3, 4, 5 times a month for different issues or whatever when you have 12 tenants. And so I choose to have a property manager, and then I don't have to go there.
Which is interesting because you just answered some people's fear, and that is, well, how much time am I going to have to invest into this? You said it's not totally passive. You didn't like that word. And there are ways to make it more passive, like hiring a property manager.
Yep.
And so if you're a little bit worried about rental properties, come see us, come talk to us. We're happy to educate you, show you what we're doing and what our clients are doing. That's a big
and also bear in mind that selecting the right tenant from the right tenant pool is important. And so a lot of our clients actually hire us to find them prospective tenants. We do the credit check and they do the personal check, and they have the final say on whether they rent to that person. But it's a lot easier to pick a tenant if you've got a bunch to choose from. And you go, oh, this one's got good credit, this one hasn't been late on their payments, their references are good, their job security is great, this is the one I'm going to take, rather than, oh, it's empty, first guy that comes to the door, or first girl I'm going to give it to, right? And that's
usually
dangerous.
how people get burned.
Yeah. All right, so now one of the big questions is, why would I want to go through the little bit of learning curve, the little bit of inconvenience to own a second property, and maybe a little bit of, what would be the word, insecurity a little bit, because my money's now not in my personal residence, it's divided between two properties. Actually I wrote them down, 7 benefits, 7 ways that real estate investment can make money.
7.
7.
I normally talk about 3. Why are
I
we
know.
at 7?
I know. Well, you're going to have to look at them. I wrote them down.
Oh, they're actually on here.
Yeah, they're awesome. Now he's reading. So, at any rate, the first way is the purchase right. And that's where we come in again. Because we want to make sure that you buy your investment property at a little bit below market value, right? And some people say, well, why can't I buy an investment property below value? Well, because it's all about the numbers, and there isn't any emotional attachment to a particular home because you need a place to live. It's more, I need a place that's going to be a great investment. So you can spend the time, we can spend the time, and we're going to find a property that someone needs to sell relatively quickly.
Now, I do want to caveat this, and that is in the spring market, I had investors who were buying properties actually above market value because they wanted a property and they expected, and it did happen, that the market continued to trend upwards.
Yep.
And so although they bought it above market value, they still bought it right because they actually got a property at that value.
Yeah, and they knew that the market was on its way up. So get in now or wait till the market slows and it's 20,000 more.
And then get a discount of 1,000 on your 20. Like, it just doesn't make sense. So
Right.
sometimes it is okay to buy above market value if you can.
But you're not really above market value because the market's going up.
Right. So you're above yesterday's value.
Yes,
below
above yesterday's, but below tomorrow's. And
Yeah.
so there's a fine definition there. That also being said, probably they lost out on the odd house because they weren't willing to go as crazy high as somebody that wanted it to live in it. And maybe they got outbid on, I don't know if your investor does.
They got outbid by a few, and then they decided, you know what, we're not going to do this again. We just want our property. We're wasting time. We're wasting energy.
Okay.
Because
So-
a lot of them are business
Now,
people. As well.
okay, so there we go. So maybe they miss out on that one, even if you missed out on that one because you want a specific property, you want it in a specific condition, and you want it in a specific area because you know it's highly rentable, you might pay slightly above market, lose that one way of earning money because you have 6 others.
Yep.
So let's talk about the 6
Awesome.
others. So leverage is one of the 3 that you normally would speak about.
No,
No?
because I
No?
wouldn't say that's a way to make money.
Oh,
That's a way to increase how much money you're making.
okay.
So I love that, though. Let's talk about leverage.
So leverage just means we're taking a property and we don't have to pay for the whole thing, which is beautiful. We buy, let's say, a townhouse for 330,000 now because they went up about 10%. So we buy this property and we only have to pay, say, $66,000 to buy a $330,000 investment plus some closing costs. So let's say $70,000 to buy a $330,000 investment. So now if it goes up 2-3%, or 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 like it did this year, that's on the total amount. But we only invested 1/5 of that amount. So whatever rate of return we're getting, let's say it's 5%, for instance, it's 5 times because we put down 20%. That's 1/5 of the total amount. So we multiply the amount, the percentage, by 5 times. So now suddenly it's 25% rate of return on our investment. That's what leverage does. Now be careful with leverage because leverage also goes the other way. I've had that where I've bought into some futures and things where you're highly leveraged and you make a lot of money if they go up, but you lose a ton of money if they go down. And that's the beauty with real estate and leverage is historically real estate goes up and it's pretty stable.
Yeah. And another cool factor with the leverage part is there's a fine line between leverage and over leverage. And we are proponents of great leverage, and we steer people away from the over leverage.
Yeah. Over leverage is where you're
just looking
borrowing
for a boost.
first and you're borrowing a second mortgage and maybe even a third to get a property.
Maybe you're 0 down.
Yeah,
maybe
because you
2%
borrowed
down.
everything.
Yeah.
You're in trouble. You're going to ask for trouble.
Because if anything happens, a late rent or some damage to the property, you're so over leveraged, you have no way of compensating for this, and you end up getting double burned when it should have just been a little issue.
It's like a house of cards. It can fall. It can fall quickly.
So over leverage, not great. Leverage, amazing for rate of return increase.
Right. So another way is the third way is mortgage pay down.
This is my favorite one.
That's
I
your
love
favorite?
mortgage pay down
Because it's hidden.
because it's hidden. You don't even know what's happening.
Yeah.
You're asleep. You're going to work, and you check your balance at the end of the month, and oh my goodness, I just made $600, and
Yeah.
I don't even know how this happened.
Yeah.
And it just continual.
Yeah.
It's wonderful.
Because your tenants, let's say your mortgage is $1,100, about $600 of that is mortgage pay down.
Yeah.
So while your
And
tenant's
that's in
paying
the
your
first
mortgage,
couple of years.
Yeah, and it gets better and better.
It gets better and better every year.
I just looked at one of my buildings actually
Yeah.
at the statement, and we're paying biweekly, and we've been accelerating our payment. But right now we're just paying biweekly, and the principal pay down was $700, and the interest was $70.
Nice.
So
That
now
feels
we're,
good.
so about $1,400 per month is going into principal pay down now, which is just money going into the bank account. So principal payment is fantastic.
And the reason I love it so much is it's not just principal pay down. It's now less leverage, which means I can re-leverage it later.
Right.
So it's
That's
double
one of
to
the
me.
other ways. Let's talk about that.
What, re-leverage? Do we
yeah,
have that in here?
re-leverage is part of the way to make money, because we can now take the money out tax-free by remortgaging
As long as you invest it again.
and then reinvest that in another property, which is going to make money again. So we take our sleepy asset as it starts to not make as much money, we re-leverage it. So that's another way. So how many are we up to? 4 now. 5th way is it appreciates in value over time, which is in combination with the leverage.
Maybe
So
this is my
two-
favorite way.
Those 2 ways. Oh, maybe that's your favorite way.
And the next one after this might also be my favorite way.
Okay.
Oh, I love these.
So appreciation and value over time. And the beauty is you're not taxed on it until you sell it. And even if you re-leverage,
Wait, say that again?
you're not taxed on it until you sell it.
Okay.
And even if you re-leverage to buy another one, you're not taxed on that property until you sell it,
On that increase in value.
on the increase in value. And here's another way that you can make money is cash flow. So
I think this is my favorite way now. Cash flow is very awesome.
Yeah, cash flow is great, but I'm not super worried about cash flow. I want my property to kind of be neutral, revenue neutral, because all the other factors are going to work in my favor. And if it's got positive cash flow, that's great, but it's not necessarily 100% necessary to make a lot of money on real estate
Especially for your lifestyle and
for
where you're
wealth building.
headed.
Yes, if you've
Right.
got enough income, you don't need cash flow. You need wealth accumulation for your future retirement or whatever you want to
And
do.
people often ask me when I sit down and do a consult with them, what's better, cash flow or the property increase?
Yes.
And I say, it depends on who you are and what you're trying to accomplish.
Yes,
And
exactly.
usually it's a trade-off. If there's more cash flow, there's usually less property increase, and vice versa. If there's more property increase, there's usually less cash flow. And so it depends on who you are and what you're wanting
It's kind
to
of
do.
market driven usually. Yep. And then the 7th way is tax deferral through depreciation. So although your property is going up in value, you can actually depreciate it because the building itself is going down in value slightly, and you can depreciate it and reduce your taxable income during the year. Now you'll get hit when
Sell
and
it.
if you sell it, but that's okay because you've had basically government money.
that
Let's
you're
say it's
using.
been 20 years. You've been using that money to make more money for 20 years. Yes, you got to pay them back, but okay.
Yep.
That's all right. It's a legal way to defer when you need to pay taxes. It's good.
It's very cool.
So, and again, untaxed growth is nice because if you just had your money sitting in a bank account and you earned interest on it, whether you took that money out or not, you have to pay tax at the end of the year on your interest at the highest tax rate, your highest marginal tax rate. So whatever your last tax rate is, you're going to pay that on the interest. So then your income's gone down and you've got less to grow the next year. Whereas in real estate, it's all sheltered until you sell it.
Now I have another question about this tax thing, right? Because
Sure.
it was my personal home. I lived there, so I don't have to pay tax on the increase.
That's correct.
But now I'm keeping it and I'm renting it out. So what happens?
Okay, that's a great question. That's the time you want to have an assessment done on the value of the property. And you're probably going to anyways, because if you're going to re-rent it, you might pull some money out to buy the next property. And then you're going to keep less money in the rental property. When you do that, it's probably going to trigger an appraisal
From the bank.
from the bank.
However, they don't always give you that appraisal.
No.
So you have to either get it from them or
Yep.
get a new one.
Yeah. And even probably a realtor's comparative market analysis is going to be good enough. You need something that stipulates what the value of your property was when you switch use of it. So when it switched from your principal residence to a rental, you need to know what that value is. And likewise, if you go from a rental and you switch it into personal use, you need to know the value when you bought it and the value when you switched the use, because that's how the government's going to figure out
The tax.
the capital gains on it.
Cool. So you don't lose your capital gains. You actually continue to. You
Yeah.
received it for that period you lived there.
Yep.
And now you'll get basically no tax on the increase in your new home. when you live
Exactly.
there. Yeah. Okay.
Exactly. Yeah, you carry it with you. So that's beautiful. And then now we've got some people looking for properties, right?
Sure do.
I've got somebody that's looking for a multi-generational family house. So something that's fairly large. In the Canada area, ideally, if it was in Canada Lakes area, they would be delighted. It's got to be minimum kind of 4 bedrooms. They had some parents come from another country to join them, and now we've got to get all these people in a nice new home. And they have between $500,000 and $600,000 to spend. So if you've got a home in the Canada area like that, that would maybe work, we'd love you to call us at 613-860-4663, because our job is to find homes for these people. And these people have sold their home, they're cash buyers, ready to buy. It could be the easiest sale you've ever had if you've got the right property. So, or maybe you know someone in that area that's got the right property that's thinking of selling. Please have them contact us. We would love to facilitate this match.
Awesome.
Yeah, and talking about investment properties, I have another client who's looking for a high-end, in the core rental property. It's triplex, fourplex, but it's got to have one unit that's quite large because she wants to be owner-occupied, live in one unit. Could be $1 million, $1.5 million, $1.75 million, somewhere in that range. So if you have one of those or know somebody that has one of those properties, let us know. We'd love to help them. And Ryan, you specialize in helping people build wealth through real estate.
Mm-hmm.
If somebody wants an investment property or wants to even just sit down and talk about the process, or maybe even if it's time or they're able to, or they've got enough equity or they got enough cash to do it, they could just call and make an appointment with you.
Yep, sure.
All right, so if you want to talk with Ryan about upping your game in the wealth building category, 613-860-4663, and we'd love to assist you.